Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, June 25th, 2025, and today we're going to be answering three questions we've been hearing from international educators over the last 7 days. And what an incredible 7 days it's been with the news coming out, aside from avoiding World War III, and now we have our visa pause lifted, and we'll talk more about the implications of that as we go along. But it's quite a, as it has been for the last few months, quite a news-filled week. And just for those who aren't familiar with the Roundup, we take our questions that we ask here on Wednesday afternoon from our newsletter that comes out on Mondays, and that comes in two forms. You can subscribe to it via our newsletter site at smieconsulting.org/subscribe. And you can get to that page, enter your details on the subscribe link, and you'll get that delivered to your inbox 9 a.m. Eastern Time every Monday morning. The newsletter itself covers a number of different areas. First off, social media topics, and that covers a very broad range. It's anything basically online, from blogs to how social media is being used, how upcoming webinars, anything digital, AI reports, anything along social media, online world of digital media, and how that impacts what we do in international education. Then there's a U.S. section of we call the Big News Central, and that includes all the top news stories that are headline news of things that have happened, legislation, executive orders, reversals, court decisions, anything that might be headline news for international education professionals. Then we cover Solutions Central, which I really focus on a lot. And we do go into some of those explanations a little bit more. Those solutions are really what when we talk about things that we could be doing differently based on all this news that we might be experiencing, or changes or trends that we see developing, or what's happening in other countries. That Solutions Central section is very important. And then a global roundup, and a global roundup of what's happening in other major destination markets regarding their international education policies, and how we might be able to learn things here or there from our competitors, direct or indirectly. So that's what's the content of the newsletter, and those are our hot takes you'll get on Monday morning in that newsletter, either through the email version, or if you also prefer to get your news through LinkedIn, we have that kind of a version as well. And I'm happy to report, I'll drop the links to both the current week's edition and the LinkedIn edition in the chat in a moment. But for those that I'm happy to report that we're now over 2,600 subscribers to the newsletter content, that each week international educators around the world are getting that in their inboxes or in their LinkedIn feeds. So really happy to be part of your international edification each week. Thank you. Thank you for digesting it. Usually the newsletter is a 5 to 10 minute read. And then here on Wednesdays during the roundup, we go next level. We kind of go into where we see some of those themes in the news stories developing, and how we might be able to talk through those issues that are facing our field, and the impacts of news stories on executive decisions in the White House or in other countries, in the State Department, in Homeland Security, wherever it might be, dealing with those kinds of issues and what that means. And we'll talk about those three questions here on the Roundup every week, every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So let's get right into the first question. And that is, are there post-pause social media review problems? And as we know, last week we realized finally, after what was originally said to be a few days turned into almost 4 weeks, a month almost of delays in visa interviews, new visa interviews that could be scheduled, preventing a lot of students at peak season of visa interviews for incoming international students. That pause caused a lot of consternation, and the net effect is still to be determined, but we are seeing early reports that it's not been an even rollout again of these, whatever the post-pause reality is. Some posts have opened up new spots. Some have already full capacity into September, which is too late for most of us. And that's the capacity that was opened up. So for students that had not yet scheduled a visa appointment prior to the end of May, and that is for some schools that might still be quite a large percentage of their potential incoming class each year might not have gotten their I-20s to schedule an appointment, or some might have been waiting to see what would happen if they hadn't scheduled before the end of May. That when we got the news during the first day of NAFTA, that Tuesday, it might be too late for them for the fall if they haven't gotten their I-20s yet in some countries. The ones where we're hearing the reports, the anecdotal reports, we see Karen Fisher in her Latitudes newsletter this morning had shared some stories from colleagues in other countries or in other institutions with students in Europe that have in Germany. I think a student from Germany was applying for a visa but couldn't get an appointment until September 3rd. We saw students in Korea, which normally doesn't have an issue in terms of visa approvals, having backlogs and harder to get appointments before time of the beginning of the academic year. So India, we're seeing the reports aren't good on the ground, and we were already expecting kind of the same, maybe if we were lucky, the same incoming students as we had last fall, which was a down year. We were hoping for that again this fall. It may not be as good even as last year, which was bad. So India could be a very hard hit year. And with everything that's been going on in China, we yet to see that there certainly weren't problems with visa appointments before. We don't know yet if there are still now, given everything else that's going on, and the reprioritization of Chinese students' eligibility for visas. So the fluid situation coming from the government, U.S. federal government, on who's in and who's out, who's in favor, who's not, what you can put down on your application, what you can't. All of these questions are constantly have been in flux in recent months, and which we're yet to see really what the end result will be. So, but let's focus on this post-pause reboot, I guess, for what the social media review is going to involve. All the articles that came out in the past week did reflect the kind of focus on things in student social media content. That there's a couple different levels of this. What the government is looking for: first, they want to see if students have any anti-U.S., anti-Islam, or excuse me, anti-Semitic views, potentially pro-terrorist views, support aid, whatever related to terrorism. Those are things the government is going to be actively looking for when they do these reviews. Now let's look at the timeline for a typical student visa appointment. First, a student gets their I-20. They pay their their I-901 fee, the immigration form for the SEVIS fee that allows them to then take next steps, get the receipt that they'll need for their visa appointment and entry into the U.S. But they then apply online using the DS-160 form and pay the fee for that application. And in that application, since 2019, there have been questions asking students for their social media handles over the last 5 years. What has changed, that has always been there for the last 6 years, but what has changed is now their specificity in terms of what the U.S. State Department folks who will be doing the review are going to be looking for. Again, what I ran through earlier, pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist views, support of, aid for, all of those things, anti-U.S. views. Well, there's concern that, as Marco Rubio has stated, getting a U.S. student visa is a privilege, not a right, and that if anyone has terrorist views or pro-Hamas or terrorist sympathetic views, they are not going to be welcome in the United States. That's now policy of the United States. Like it or not, and most would say we don't want terrorists, those that support terrorists in the United States. So that's most Americans' views. That's not a bad thing to say that and have that as one of the requirements. The question and the challenges that will come into play is that's a very It's still fairly amorphous in terms of what that level of specificity consular officer is doing the review of a student's social media to see what's on there, what the content of it is. The other more troubling piece for international educators, for those that believe in freedom of speech, is on social media. Most of us who've been on it, who grew up on it, and or adapted to it in their later years, have know that like on Facebook, for example, you can set your posts to be private or public, or to a limited audience, or friends only, or whatever the case may be. However you want to control who sees your content, you have that ability. What students are being told as part of their application when they fill out the DS-160 form, which is before they go for their visa interview, before they go for their interview, they have to make those social media accounts public. So that means that anyone who's on those platforms can then see the content that a student, based on their handle, has made available or has made public. So there are things on my social media that I don't want the rest of the world to see. That they're meant for friends. They're meant for maybe just a few friends that I want to see them. But now, if I were an international student, not a U.S. citizen, green card holder, that would be applying for a visa now to come to the U.S., I would be required to make all my social media posts public. And I don't know how you make all of them, because I know you can set future posts to public or private, but I don't know if you can en masse change all your social media posts. If you post regularly every day, like I do on my social channels, that could be a very time-consuming part. It says going back 5 years that's potentially the history of social media accounts that they can look at. So that is a real conundrum for a lot of folks, and what level of detail they're going to get. The Karen Fisher's article today asked the question, well, should students be deleting their social media history? And is that going to be suspicious if they don't have any social media footprint? For an 18, 19-year-old to have no social media, that would be very odd, it would seem. So to make that case, and in the interview, if that comes up, and if they are caught in a lie, then that's a visa denial. There's not going to be any that's lying on on an application. So that can be an automatic reason for denial. So that's there's some real challenges coming up in terms of what level. So you got really three things. You've got the post-pause as are appointments readily available, and are students going to be able to get appointments that have I-20s for the fall before they need to be on campus? Are now we're going to see in the next few weeks, if anyone with an I-20 can't get an appointment, there's going to be ISSS offices or admissions offices that are going through huge deferrals for students from fall to spring. And there are going to be knock-on impacts on campus too, and what that might look like for you. There are going to be the students that are concerned about making all their posts public, and if there's private things that they don't want made available, should they be deleting those? And if that happens, deleting individual posts is probably not an issue, but particularly if it's personal and not necessarily terrorist related. If it's terrorist related and you have that kind of content, you probably aren't going to be applying for a visa right now. But at least that would be the hope. Deleting social media accounts, and not putting anything down on that application is going to be viewed by most, rightly so, fairly suspiciously. So those are going to be challenges. I think we're really dealing with a great unknown, as it seems to be everything we've been dealing with in the last few months with this administration. That's a very much a moving target. We don't know how things are going to change and how they're going to be interpreted. Are they going to be challenged in the courts? It's much less likely that visa applicants who have not yet come to the United States, that can't really be challenged unless institutions might file a class action suit to stop it. I don't know if they even have grounds to, but these are the things that we need to be aware of, and that will have impacts on our campus. But I do anticipate over the next 3 weeks check-ins with all your admitted students who you've issued I-20s to, and get a feel from those on the ground to say, hey, have you been able to secure an appointment? Have you applied for and filled out your DS-160 form yet? And get some intel from your admitted students to say, hey, are you going to be able to make it here in time? Can you even get an appointment in time? And if they can't, then be proactive. Start asking, would you like to defer? We're more than happy to make that happen. So these are the things that we need to deal with, the knock-ons that we're going to be impacting us for the next few weeks. So it's better to get out in front of it while you can. And start now that we have the clock is now ticking and appointments are now available again. If they're not available in your target countries for students that you've already issued I-20s to, then it's probably probably a deferral is the option that makes most sense. Hopefully they don't go to another country. That could be a reality too if they've been applying other places, not besides the United States. So that's the first question of the day. Yes, there are post-pause social media review problems, and we'll be dealing with that for the coming few weeks, I'm sure, before we get to equilibrium on what might be the new normal there. So second question of the day is, what would an expanded travel ban mean? Now, we know there were a number of countries, a couple dozen countries that were rolled out about a month ago now that have red, which means no visa applicants will be allowed in who didn't already have a visa from those red countries. Then orange countries, there may be certain exceptions, and then yellow countries, those are kind of those that are on warning that might not be let in. But we already know on that top level, Iran was on that list. We also have Myanmar on the red list, so students from those countries are not going to be allowed in who don't already have visas. And those that are already in the country with visas or already had visas beforehand, we're encouraging them to get here as soon as they can within the 30 days before their program start date. So what does that mean that's the current existing travel ban areas. We know in Trump 1.0 travel bans that were eventually exemptions carved out for students. There's no talk yet to see whether or not that will be the case this time around. If there is anything that moves the needle in Iran, for example, where there may be peace talks, we may get better access to security data. We may have a better relationship down the road with Iran. If that ever happens, maybe they can get off that red list. Or we look at students who have been living outside of Iran, which is the larger Iranian diaspora. Those folks potentially ones that we could consider in the exemption category. So that's the existing students, obviously, that we're talking about here. That we might want, there may be exemptions. But nothing's been formalized there. We know that just because they decide something 1 week could be a very different story 2 weeks from today in terms of what that might look like. But the real question is that we're looking at now is with the talk of an expanded travel ban, which includes 36 more countries, greater majority of which are in Africa, that could be on the list of fall into that red, orange, yellow list. Now, we already knew that in the first batch there were a number of African countries that were on the original list of red, orange, or yellow countries. We knew that this new list, which includes 36 more countries, almost all of which are in Africa, you have on that new list Nigeria and Ghana, as well as I think Kenya and Cameroon and a couple other, maybe not Kenya, I'm not sure. But that new list does have some major senders to the United States. We know Iran is in the top 10, has been on the top 10 list for a number of years as top 10 sender to the United States. But now you also have top 20 senders, Nigeria and Ghana, potentially on the list, on the chopping block, as well as most of the African continent, particularly sub-Saharan Africa. I think there's even Egypt is on that list. So we do have quite a large list of countries in the mix for this potential expanded travel ban. Again, we know that the original travel ban countries that were proposed, I think back in February, did include China and was maybe potentially thinking India too, and that if that happens, we might as well all shut up shop and go home because our jobs would be kind of going out of business sale for institutions in international offices if we had lost India and China. So we're already going to be seeing decreases in India because of the visa delays that this pause has caused. Now other countries may be falling into suit, not getting our doctoral students from Iran anymore, being able to arrive who didn't already have I-20s or visas before the ban was put in place. So we've had a rough month in international ed, and I think for most of us, we're just trying to keep our heads above water, frankly. It's been a very turbulent time in our profession, and I think for many of us, I talk to colleagues every week on LinkedIn, having phone chats, commiserating about our experiences, those that were on campus that have recently left their positions because of downsizing or semi-retirement, going to the dark side, going into consulting, whatever it might be. There's some real, well, everybody's nervous, everybody's anxious, and there's a few who are downright angry. And frankly, I don't blame them for the anger they feel towards this government and the policies that it's put in place that are directly impacting our students who we care about so deeply, and our livelihood as a profession. We're under threat. Higher ed is under threat generally, but international education is bearing the brunt of a lot of the weight of particularly State Departments, Homeland Security. Our students have been under the microscope and have always been the most highly vetted group of non-immigrants in this country for the last 2.5 decades. And now the increasing level of scrutiny they're put under, and obviously the SEVIS terminations we experienced in March and April were significant, and those all left us kind of speechless for quite a while as to how and why these things were happening. But we see now the future of our profession with these visa pauses and the impact and the timing on most everything that this administration has done related to international education has been poor, and it has been, particularly with the visa pause, coming at the worst potential time, because we know that 70% of student visa applicants apply between May and August. Those 4 months are the most critical, and we've lost basically a month of that time because of delays that could have been started back in February, if you want to be honest about it. These decisions about the social media review, we already knew that was coming. They hadn't nailed down the criteria yet, and they delayed that process for 5 months before they even started to think about it. So we see a government that really isn't very strategic with what it's been doing. It's been doing things quite haphazardly, roughshod, ill-prepared in terms of how they used AI in that initial run on the SEVIS terminations, pulling basically any student that had any contact with any law enforcement, no matter what it was. That what they fed their AI bot is basically garbage, and garbage in, garbage out. And you get basically a list of over 4,000 students who had their SEVIS records terminated without good cause, and 99.9% of them had their numbers or their status reinstated. Some institutions poorly advised students that they should leave the country and then try and get back in legally, when if they just waited 2-3 weeks, they would have been fine. And it really upends the lives of these students. So we have to really be careful of how we approach these issues as institutions, and certainly the General Counsel's offices that tended to err on the side of caution are probably kicking themselves because of that, because we know that those were ill-advised decisions. That if folks would have taken a step back, looked at what was happening, and realized these are egregious breaches of due process, of any protocols that had existed that were overhyped as social media that basically looking for everything. Basically, was initially started as anti-Semitism witch hunts for those that had expressed views or been involved in protests. And the numbers that have actually had their visas terminated, as well as SEVIS records visas revoked as well as SEVIS records terminated is a pretty small number. But what we don't see is the impact that that has had on our students, on all of our students that were in legal status and that maybe were at a protest one day, and if they get caught up in something, then it could have serious long-term implications for their future, just because of being involved in a protest. And the level of, are they actually expressing pro-terrorist views is another thing that we really don't know, and I don't think the government really cared that what they were tracking or looking for was really that accurate. So this is what we're really dealing with at this point. So what we really need to focus on in what we do here in our work in international education is really to focus on the positives, and the positives are it seems pretty few and far between, but those students that have done it right, that have never violated status, there are success stories, and frankly we need to let them tell our stories. But when it comes to expanded travel bans, the focus of that expanded travel ban is Africa. South Africa's not on there, Morocco's not on there, a couple other countries that might have surprised you are not on that list either. But what we do see is Ivory Coast, Ghana, Egypt, Ethiopia, Cameroon, Cambodia is also on the list, obviously outside of Africa. But we do not see Kenya on the list. We do not see South Africa on the list. We do not see Morocco on the list. So I think Algeria and Tunisia are not on the list either. So you do see bulk of those new countries are sub-Saharan Africa. We do see South Sudan, Syria, Tanzania. Quite a bit, quite a few countries that we are no longer going to, if this happens, this one isn't done yet, but if it does happen, we will lose the ability to enroll new students from Africa, unless they're already in the United States now. And there may still be some who are, but we'll see what happens with that if and when it does go into effect. Now, last question of the day is which way is the UK going with international education as a priority? Certainly our colleagues on the university side have had to deal with quite a bit over the last couple of years with the dependent study ban, with the Conservative government that recently left power, putting in place some recommendations that the current government is seeming to go along with shortening the graduate route from 2 years to 18 months. Also looking at increasing, which was put in place before, increasing the minimum salaries for positions that international students can get. You see other institutions that have seen international students solely as a revenue generator to prop up their dropping domestic dropping domestic populations. You're seeing them kind of getting into financial difficulties. We're not talking Russell Group here, or the upper tier of UK colleagues in universities. Again, they have 152 institutions, so we're probably talking about the top third are fine, but the bottom 2/3 are the ones that might have over-relied on international students financially, that have seen the drop in the last couple of years, are now financially in the crapper, and are potentially likely not going to get bailed out by the government. So you also have on the positive side, you have the interest in the UK as a study destination has not decreased significantly, even with that drop in the number of months students can do their graduate route. Also, because of everything going on in the U.S., the UK is suddenly becoming more attractive, perhaps, as a destination. So we see a lot happening in the UK that might be deemed as fairly positive. So what happens on that front? It's in the UK. You have the immigration white paper that does outline 8 rules that will make it more expensive for international students to study in the UK. because the fees that are surcharges that are going to be put on institutions are going to be passed for international students are going to be passed on to international students to pay. So that's going to be a disincentive financially. But you then also have the visa numbers have been up to I think 15 to 19% this last quarter, and that those numbers look set to continue to grow. So it's really quite a bit of unknown in the UK in terms of what might happen there. But you do see warnings that the UK should not repeat the mistakes of the US. The Economics Times in India has said that. That's an interesting perspective there. But we also have some doomsayers that are saying higher ed will pay the price. University World News article focuses on the UK. That former Home Secretary Jack Straw has said higher ed will pay the price for unscrupulous recruitment. So that's something we'll see. That talks about the financial implications of over-reliance on international students instead of focusing on quality. So we'll see what happens in the end there, but we do have a very a country destination, one of the big four, that is undergoing some roller coasters like we are from week to week, but probably are having more ups and downs. But distance has its benefits, so we'll see what a few weeks, a couple more months from now, we'll see where we end up in the fall, and who comes out smelling brighter about their future as a major destination. That's all we have for you this week on the Roundup. Appreciate you being with us. We'll come to you again next Wednesday, July 2nd, as we get into the last part of the back half of 2025, a year that can't end soon enough for many of us. And it's going to be quite an interesting next couple of months, July and August, before our fall semesters begin. So until then, we'll keep you posted through the newsletter every Monday. Hopefully you subscribe to that, and check in with us on Wednesdays, either live or on repeat, or the audio-only podcast to listen while you work out or walk or work. So until next time,